Welcome everybody. Today's a little bit different video. So earlier this week, a fellow YouTuber, Cotton Top 3, posted a 1,000-hour review of his Kubota KX57-4, and I watched that whole video. It's about 30 minutes. It's really informative, and he had just hit 1,000 hours on his machine, and as a matter of fact, I have just hit 1,000 hours on my machine since I've owned it, and I thought it would be a really good idea to do a 1,000-hour review of my Kubota U55-4, which is a very similar machine to the KX. We'll go over a couple of differences. I pretty much agree with everything, you know, almost everything with him on that video, but just want to go over some things from my point of view on this machine. Mine has the cab, his has the canopy, so a few differences. So I want to go over everything. If you guys are interested in getting a Mini for your projects, you know, it's really good to hear from people that do this work every day and own this equipment. YouTube is a great resource when you're looking to buy, you know, any piece of equipment or a tool. So let's get into this thing, and I'm gonna let you guys know my thoughts on this. All right, so here she is. She's a little dirty, so forgive me. She does need to be washed. So Cotton Top 3's, his machine is a 2019. Mine is a 2014. I bought this almost 2 years ago. It was in August of 2020 when we bought this machine. So it was 6 years old when I bought it. Had it just over 2 years now. And I've literally just put 1,000 hours on it. It literally just got back from John Deere getting its 1,000-hour service, all the fluids, filters, all that stuff. They did that over there for me. About 40 hours ago was when it come back. So first thing I want to address is the first thing that Cotton Top 3 said with these Kubota machines. For the price that Kubota charges for these machines, or even on a resale on a used machine, these machines are great value for the money. I agree with him that there's probably not a better machine on the market, you know, that for what you get, bang to buck, this is probably the best machine on the market. And one of the main reasons I bought this machine used was because it was significantly less expensive than similar size class machines from other manufacturers, specifically Takeuchi. I got this machine, and it's basically comparable spec-wise to a Kubota TB260, and I was looking at machines that had way more hours on them, with about the same year range, with significantly more hours on them, at 10 to 15,000 more for those machines, just because of the name. So I will agree that the Kubotas, I don't think you can get a better bang for your buck. It seems like it's a machine that's built just as well as the John Deeres, the Cats, the Takeuchis, but you don't really get that massive surcharge in having that name on the side of the machine. Another thing that he mentioned, that he has never had to really turn a wrench on his machine other than doing the service work. And for me, running my machine, that's pretty much been the same thing on this machine, other than just needing the service work. And, you know, I've blown a couple of hydraulic lines on the mulcher, which was really my fault, not the machine's fault. The lines coming up off the mulcher, I don't have the mulcher hooked up, I got the bucket. But regardless, you guys have seen the mulcher enough to know it comes up and hooks up right here. I've snagged that line on a couple tree limbs before, and I've snagged that one up there. It's come loose. But other than that, I've never really had any issues with this machine as far as having to do any real repairs. And the other thing I had to do was I had to replace this left track over here. It went bad. But when you're doing what I'm doing, as far as going into the woods, mulching and going over stumps and roots and stuff like that, your tracks are gonna take a beating. So that track lasted about 700 hours on that side. The tracks when I got this machine were fairly new. This one it's the original one that I bought it with, and it was fairly new when I got this machine. I think it had maybe 100 or so hours, and they said they were basically new. So that other one ripped in half. I will say this, if you're needing a track, I got this from Kubota. It's an OEM track, but it's made by a company called Dominion, if I remember correctly. I really, really like this track. It's got about 300 hours on it, and it doesn't have a mark on it. You can tell it's a significantly thicker track in the thickness of it right here. It's a really great track, and they make OEM spec tracks for just about any make and machine, make model machine that you want to talk about, from skid steers, mini excavators, all that stuff. This is some no-name track. It doesn't even have a name on it. Even though the other one, this one's lasted 1,000 hours, you can just tell it's not as good a quality track as that Dominion track. So when this one goes out, I'll definitely be going to get one of those Dominion tracks. And you can order, I believe, directly from Dominion. And I'll try to put a link in the link in the description below. If you're looking for an OEM track, I highly recommend them for getting a track. So there's that. But other than that, I haven't had to do anything to this machine to really fix anything. This light, I did bust this light up here. It's come loose, it's wedged in there, but that was again my fault. It hit a branch, broke that plastic right there. But as far as me just running it out there every day and having something just fail, hasn't happened. So you know, as far as, you know, anything, the major components, I've been very, very happy with all of that. And considering how hard I run this machine and its age, it's been very surprising. I mean, this is now an 8-year-old machine, and I have no plans to get rid of it anytime soon. Another thing that he talked about, you know, going back to having to turn a wrench, this thing has no leaks on it that I know of. And again, that being said, this is an 8-year-old machine. I run this machine on a weekly, if not almost daily basis. No hydraulic leaks, no oil leaks, nothing. None of these fittings over here around these hydraulic lines, none of that stuff leaks. I mean, it's been really good, you know, in that regard. It holds oil, that's for sure. Nothing leaks to my knowledge. Another thing that Cotton Top 3 mentioned, and really is one of the blessings of getting a Kubota machine, is there are dealers everywhere across the country for Kubota. There's several around my neck of the woods. So just about anywhere you go, if you're out doing work across multi-states, you know, a large area, if you're a big-time contractor and you're working across, you know, 2 or 3 different states, you can go just about anywhere, and within a reasonable drive, there's going to be a Kubota dealer near you. I will say one thing: I don't like my local Kubota dealer. I would never even let them turn a wrench on this machine. I've been up there when I went up there to get the parts and filters and everything for the 1,000-hour service. They couldn't even give me the right filters. I had to go back and get another filter because they didn't even give me one, and then what they gave me was the wrong thing. And when I say it was wrong, it wasn't like it was for a different machine. It was the completely different part. I mean, the guy didn't even sound like he knew what he was talking about, at least one of the guys in there. So I don't particularly like my Kubota dealer. That's why the guys over at John Deere do all of my service work on no matter what machine I own. The guys over at the local Flint, which is now Dobbs Equipment, Flint got bought out by Dobbs, but that's a whole nother story. But they do all my service work, and I've been very happy with that for the last couple of years. Greg and John and the guys over at the Ainer Dobbs Equipment have done me very, very well with fixing my equipment and getting me, you know, when I bring something over there, they're very good about getting on top of it and getting it back to me quickly, because they know I'm kind of a small fish, and I rely on this equipment. I don't have backup machines. I don't have other machines. And what I do as far as running this with a mulcher, you can't go rent that somewhere. You know, if I was doing dirt work, you know, with these machines every day, you know, I could get by for a couple days going to go rent a mini or a skid steer and get by on projects if I was doing grade work or dirt work or driveways. But I mulch, and you can't go rent something like that around here. So they're very good about getting me back going. So one of the big differences is between my machine and Cotton Top 3 is I have the cab. Now, with what I do, if you're going to be doing a lot of mulching and brush cutting, if you're buying one of these machines to do mulching and brush cutting, I highly recommend the cab. And here's why. You would think it's because you would want the front here to keep stuff from getting thrown back at you. And yes, that is a concern. You can still modify if you have an open cab. I've seen plenty of guys put the plexiglass up. This one even has little screw holes right here for the Lexan or plexiglass to cover this windshield, or a metal grill, whatever you want to go with. The mulcher's been very good about not throwing stuff back at this machine. It typically just throws stuff left and right. It rarely ever throws anything back this way. And it's typically what I call a ricochet. Something will come back around out of the mulcher and just hit the ground and then come back, and it's usually not enough force to bust anything, you know, on this machine. But the reason I recommend the cab is because of the dust. If you're going to be out mulching or brush cutting a lot with an open cab machine, you're going to breathe a lot of dust, and that's not good for you. So even if you've got this shield in the front, that dust is going to come around and you're going to breathe it a lot. So you're either going to have to wear like a mask or you know, a gaiter over your face or something like that to mitigate breathing that dust. You know, and that's just not going to be comfortable when it's out hot and stuff like that, and especially if you wear glasses like me. So if you're going to be doing a lot of mulching and brush cutting with one of these machines, highly recommend getting the cab, predominantly for the dust. So just something to think about with that. Obviously having the AC in that is a huge blessing to keep you cool while you're out working. The AC in this works okay when it's really hot out. It does when it's really hot and sunny out. It does struggle a little bit. I'm not uncomfortable, but it's not ice cold in there. I think most of it has to do with the glass. You see this thing has a lot of glass on it, and I think just with the sun coming through all that glass, the AC just struggles a little bit to keep it as cool as I would like. But I'm not necessarily uncomfortable in there. I'm not sweating or dying or anything like that, but I wish it was a little bit better. This machine with the engine and the hydraulics is between the U55-4 and the KX57-4, the engine and the hydraulics are exactly the same. The only difference is the U is a zero tail, so when you swing out this way, that counterweight only comes out about 2.5 inches or so past the tracks. The 57 comes out like 11 inches, and the 57 has a little bit longer arm. From there down to the bucket pin, the arm is a little longer, so you get a little bit more reach, but you sacrifice some arm crowd force, that digging force that this arm has. The 55 has a little bit more digging force over the 57, but the 57 has a little bit more reach. But the engine is the same, as 47 horsepower, and one thing I love about the engine in this thing, other than it's been super reliable, every time I put the key in and crank this thing, it fires right up. The fuel burn on this thing is amazing. It's really good on fuel. Even if I'm running that mulcher and I'm out just running it wide open, it will run all day on a tank of fuel. I think the fuel capacity is, I want to say right at about 20 gallons, and I can run all day wide open running that mulcher and still have fuel left in the tank. 8 hours of runtime wide open, and there'll still be fuel left. But if I'm doing light grade work or light dirt work or something like that, I can get even better fuel economy, because these machines come with an eco button where that cuts the fuel consumption by about, I think, 10 or 15%. Now you do lose a little bit of power, but if you're just doing like light landscaping or grading, like digging out a ditch, or you know, doing some light grade work for like pavers or concrete, that eco button, you know, will save you a lot of fuel. So that's really been good. When I'm out mulching, for what I charge versus what this thing burns in fuel, I make really good money. So that's been really good. Being able to not have to take time to refuel this thing during the middle of the day. That was one thing with the John Deere. If I was out running all day, even just doing dirt work, if I was running that thing all day, you're typically going to have to put fuel in it after about 4 or 5 hours. Same thing with the ASV. It's got like a 30-some gallon tank in it, and John told me you're going to get about 4 or 5 hours of runtime out of it running that mulcher before you're going to have to put fuel in it. That was one of the things that they corrected with the 135. They put a much bigger fuel tank in it where you can run all day. But that's one thing I really do like about this machine. It's very good on fuel. So one of the things that Cotton Top 3 mentioned, and I've probably said this many times, is these 55, these 5.5 ton machines. That 55, it typically stands for 5.5 tons. The 5.5 to 6 ton machines like these U55, KX57-4, or a TOC TB260, or a John Deere 60G, any of those machines, the Yanmar 55 like Chris over at Let's Dig 18 has, these are really, really good, versatile machines. In, you know, with the power that you get versus the weight and size ratio, they're awesome machines. They're small enough to go into backyards or tight spots, you know, and go and do work that a mini excavator would do, but plenty of power to do just about anything. Plenty of auxiliary power to run any attachment, mulcher, brush cutter, hammer, flail mower, auger, whatever you want to talk about. You know, clear brush, clear light brush, you know, dig a big stump out of the ground if you need to. Can lift a good bit of weight. I think you know, that 57, I don't know how much this one will lift, but it's not quite as much as the 57, but it's pretty close. But you know, I think that one will lift like 3,000 odd pounds, and that's a good bit of weight. So these are really, really good size machines. And if you're going to be mulching, you're going to be running a mulcher head like a Prenoth or a Dennis Seamoth, that mulcher weighs 1,000 pounds. In my personal opinion, you need at a minimum to run a mulcher, a 5.5 ton machine, mostly because of the weight. You know, I see guys, they'll buy a, you know, let's say like a Kubota KX57-4, and it's got 17 gallons a minute, and they look on the mulcher specs and they say, oh, that thing only needs like 13 to 25 gallons of flow, so I can run it. But they don't think about the weight on the end of it. So you've got to think about the weight. So this machine is just right there, you know, with the capacity that it's got, you know, weight wise to handle that 1,000-pound mulcher on it. So I've been very, very happy with these. And if, in my personal opinion, if you're going to be running a mulcher, you're going to need any 5.5 ton will typically handle one of these, you know, a mulcher. 6 ton, definitely. TB260, John Deere 60G, any of those machines will definitely handle it. But the power to weight ratio with these machines to do all kinds of different work, landscaping, grading, excavation, footers, mulching, brush cutting, it's a really, really great combination there with this size machine. One of the things I like about the Kubotas as well is this quick connect coupler. I really like this design for the quick connect. It's very easy, it's very simple. The guy that I work for on the farm property has a Takeuchi, and it has a Wainwright style coupler where it hooks in up underneath here, and then it has a pin that goes in like this. I hate that coupler. It's a pain in the butt to get that thing hooked and unhooked up. This thing is super simple. It's one pin. It typically comes right in and out. It's super simple. And the other thing I like about it is you can buy these ears online, pre-machined, and then you can go buy other buckets for other manufacturers, cut those off and just weld on these ears, and you're good to go. And if you want a good example of that, Andrew Camerata's most recent video, that's exactly what he did. He went and bought a Wainwright style bucket. That was a Wainwright style, if you want to know what that was. It had that open section right here, and then it had the pin grabber in the back. That's a Wainwright style. He cut that off, ground it down, and then welded on Kubota couplers, and now he's got a Kubota bucket basically. So I really like that. You can go out and buy other buckets that were on other machines, cut those couplers off, easily weld new couplers on. You can go online and just, they're called bucket ears. You can go online and just search Kubota, whatever size machine you got, like Kubota KX57-4 bucket ears, and you can get these pre-machined for like, you can get a set of them for around like 200 bucks. So that's, I really, really do like the quick coupler system set up on these Kubotas. Speaking of that right there, while we're talking about this, one thing I don't like about this machine is this thumb. This thumb design sucks. It's very narrow, and it's not good at grabbing stuff, especially brush and stuff like that, and debris, trash. It's not a good thumb. So if you're thinking about getting one of these machines, brand new from the factory, my opinion, and you're going to be using the thumb a lot, you're going to be doing brush work or picking up trees or whatever, don't get this thumb. Just get it without the thumb, and then go to AMI or Workbrow or somebody like that and get a better thumb set up for whatever bucket you're running. I wouldn't even get the thumb, because typically if you get a thumb from a third party, it's going to come with the longer pin, it's going to come with your cylinder and everything. You know, you just tell them what machine you got and what size bucket and what the spacing is on the teeth, and they'll hook you up. So if you're going to be getting one of these machines from the factory, unless they've changed this bucket, this thumb design, I wouldn't get this. I wouldn't get that thumb. So just my opinion on that. I know Cotton Top 3 doesn't use that. He uses that jawbone bucket. You know, I don't use the thumb enough to really justify spending 10 grand on a jawbone bucket, but and I don't use the thumb enough really to justify getting a whole new thumb, but I don't really like that thumb. One thing I will say though, you know, with his setup, if you're going to be doing tree work with one of these size machines, I would highly recommend getting that grapple. I've seen him use that grapple, and for doing tree work, that thing is the bee's knees for doing tree work. So if you got questions about that grapple, hit him up, but I would highly recommend agreeing with him. If you're going to be doing a lot of tree work with one of these machines, just spend the money and get a grapple. So how that grapple works is he's got the one auxiliary line, and so do I. So I've got one auxiliary that comes down to this diverter valve. If you're getting one of these from the factory and you're going to be running attachments, I highly recommend getting the dual auxiliary, because you can actually run 2 different functions at one time without having to do the electrical setup for a solenoid down here on whatever attachment you're running. So like, to give an example, if I had 2 auxiliaries, I could actually run the mulcher hooked up and hook this thumb up, and if I had like a little grabber set up bolted to the back of the mulcher, I could like turn off the mulcher and then use the thumb and the back end of the mulcher there to pick stuff up with. I'd have to take that motor cover off and get a different motor cover set up that would meet with this thumb, but it's doable. So if you're going to be doing like, you know, multi-function stuff, you know, and you're getting one of these from the factory, get the dual auxiliaries. Highly recommend that. Another thing that I would highly recommend, if you're looking for one of these used or you're going to order one from the factory, get the 4-way blade. I know you're probably thinking if you're doing mulching work or something like that, and you're not going to be doing a lot of dirt work, you may not need it, but it's so handy, and you will find yourself using it more than you ever thought. When I got my other John Deere, it had the 4-way blade on it, and I was like, yeah, that's cool. I'll probably never use that. I used it all the time, and it was so handy. So if you're looking at one of these machines, get one with the 4-way blade, either from the factory or find a used one. And luckily, a lot of the Kubotas come with the 4-way. And if you want an 040, the 040s come with a 6-way. And I really wish these 55s or the 57s would come with a 6-way. Because the 6-way is awesome on the 040s. If I could get a 6-way setup on, you know, the next machine I get, I would do that in a heartbeat, because it's just so versatile. So something to think about. You may not think you'll use that 4-way blade, but you'll use it more than you think. So obviously, keeping any piece of equipment running, one of the major things you can do is keep it greased. And I am, like Cotton Top 3, religious about keeping this machine greased. You can see there's grease in everything around all of this thing. I grease this thing religiously every 6 to 8 hours, mainly because the mulcher requires grease in those bearings about every 8 hours, or at least I mulch it. I put grease in that mulcher every 8 hours. So when I put grease in the mulcher, I just put grease in the whole machine. So grease your stuff. That's all I can say. If you got it, grease it. Greg over at John Deere has told me horror stories about that. Guys came in, bought a brand new, I think it was a 35G, brand new, never greased it, and the bushing up in where the arm connects to the boom wore completely out, and they almost had to actually replace the entire arm. It was so worn, but they were able to fix it. But yeah, grease your stuff, man. Just get a grease gun, you know, spend $250, get a battery powered DeWalt or Milwaukee grease gun, and keep your stuff greased. One of the things I love about this Kubota too that Cotton Top 3 mentioned is it's so smooth. It has a lot of power for its size machine, but it's also a very smooth machine. It multi-functions great. Even when I'm running the brush cutter or the mulcher, yes, like, you know, when I'm running the mulcher, it does move, everything moves a little bit slower, because, I mean, but it's pushing 20 gallons a minute through this 3/4 inch line all the way down to that mulcher. So that pump is running pretty good. So obviously everything is going to move slower, but it still moves fast enough for me to be very, very efficient at whatever it is I'm mulching or cutting. So these machines are very, very, very smooth on the hydraulics. I have loved running this machine when it comes to the hydraulics and how smooth and powerful they are. So highly recommend that on these machines. So one of the things that Cotton Top 3 mentioned on his that he really does not like is the auxiliary system with how you turn it on, and I won't go into all of that like he did, but it sucks. So basically what you have to do, if I want to run the mulcher, you have to put this safety bar down. Obviously that's kind of like every excavator has this safety bar, but then you actually have to go in here and actually hit this button to find your preset to turn on the mulcher or the thumb, basically to activate the auxiliary. Whether if you're running a mulcher, a thumb, whatever it is, you have to click this button to do that. And that's just, it's kind of a pain. And then sometimes you'll get out and then come back in and want to turn the mulcher back on, and there's 5 presets in there, and it'll go to like the next preset. So then you have to hit it like 3 or 4 more times to cycle it back through to get back to the right preset that you need. It's a pain. And on the new Dash 5s, I know for certain you don't have to hit a button here. It's on the joystick. I know that's a fact because I've seen it and I've talked to Kubota about that. So that is something new, but I wish you could just put this safety bar down and click this button and go, and not have to just do that over and over and over. So that's a pain in the butt with these Dash 4s, but you know, it's not a killer for me, but it's a pain. So this machine comes in at I don't know if this includes the bucket or not, but the spec sheet says about 12,500 pounds with this particular setup, with the cab and the 4-way blade with rubber tracks. I do pull this on a bumper pull trailer. If you're familiar with my channel, I pull this behind a gas F250. This is a Kaufman trailer. This is a gross rated 17,000 pound trailer, and I have not had too many issues with this trailer holding that weight. And I don't have too many issues of this gas truck pulling this machine either, as long as it's local. As long as you're not pulling, you know, really long distances, the gas is fine on these 3/4. I guess that's a 3/4 ton. On this 250, it's a F250. The one thing it does do on these bumper pulls though is it wears out your back tires very quickly. I will say that. That's the only downside I've had with the bumper pulling this machine or the skid steer is, and I rotate these tires every oil change. So every 4 to 5,000 miles when I get an oil change, because I run full synthetic oil, Mobil 1, every oil change I have those tires rotated, and it wears on them pretty good pulling that weight around on the tires. But bumper pull for that amount of weight, you know, on an F250, I have no issues. It does, if you're going up a lot of hills though, or if you're traveling long distances, you might want to get the diesel, because that thing does struggle a little bit with that gas engine pulling up a hill. But other than that, I don't, just toting around locally and I'm down here at the beach, everything's flat, I have no issues with that truck pulling on a bumper pull. Okay, so last couple things with this machine. One of the things that Cotton Top 3 mentioned was the regen on this. This machine is 47 horsepower. It does not need DEF, thank goodness, but it does regen. You know, I think he said about every 15 hours, and I think that's right. Mine seems to do it about every 15 to 20 hours or so. Honestly, if it didn't tell me it was regenning, I wouldn't even know it. But when it goes into regen, it does have a little message that comes up right here on the screen, says, hey, it's in regen mode, takes about 10 minutes or so. Just turn it up wide open, and typically I'm mulching, so I'm running close to full throttle, if not full throttle anyway. I just let it regen, let it do its thing, keep on doing my thing, and it does its thing. So one of the reasons I love running this machine is it just doesn't, I put a key in it, I turn it on, and it goes and does, and I don't have any issues. And out of everything I own, this is the machine that has given me the least problems, and that's why I like working with it so much, because I know when I take it out to a job, it's going to make it through the day, do what I need to do, get the job done, get me back to the office, make me money, and I'm good. You know, and that's why I love running this machine. The John Deere was a great skid steer, but it was finicky sometimes, and sometimes I would go out to a job and I'm like, I would just stand over it and pray, please God, just let me get through the day with this machine and not have any issues. So I have been very lucky to not have any issues with this machine. You know, and that's why I love running it so much, because it's just so reliable. But the regen does its thing, and I don't even know it's going, and it just does it. So been very happy with that. So one last thing I'll talk about that I don't like, which is not really a deal breaker, but it's one of the things that I don't particularly care for on this machine, is the ergonomics of the controls. This is not a super comfortable cab to sit in, and I'll show you why, at least for me. So when I sit in this thing, I'm gonna show you, it's a little dirty, so I apologize. So when I sit in this thing and I sit down, my arms are, see how far, like I have to stretch my arms down, and I've got the seat down as far as it'll go. These armrests are not adjustable, and this seat is as down as far as it will go. My hands are all the way kind of down here on these controls, and it's not natural. When I had my John Deere, my 35, you were like up here like this, you know, and it was almost like sitting in a chair with your armrest. This way down here is just not natural, and it's just not a fun cab to sit in and operate all day with your arms being way down here like this on these controls. So that's one of the things I have not really cared for with the ergonomics of this. That's one thing that I do love about that Takeuchi that I run down there for my client down there on his farm property. The ergonomics of that machine, the way the seat sits, the way the controls are set up as you sit in the seat is just so awesome. So Kubota, if you're listening, take some notes from Takeuchi when it comes to how the seat and the controls work as far as the ergonomics, you know, when you sit in the seat and put your hands on the controls, because that machine is perfect. But other than that, that's the one, that thumb and the cab are the two things I really don't, as far as sitting in the seat and putting my hands on the controls, I don't really like about this machine. But other than that, I've been very, very happy with this machine, and it's been super reliable, and it's been such a blessing. It's one of the best investments I've ever made for my business. But I will say this, it's one of the things that Cotton Top 3 said, if you're looking to do, you know, buy a piece of equipment, anything, get on YouTube and do your research. I'm not saying this is the perfect machine for you. It may not be. It's perfect for me and what I do, but maybe you need something else. You know, maybe you don't have a Kubota dealer where you're at. Maybe you need a bigger machine. Maybe you need something that's just different. You know, whatever it is, go online and do your research, because there are plenty of people on YouTube that will tell you whether something works or doesn't work. And if it don't work, I can assure you, people will be more than happy to tell you it don't work. This thing works for what I do, and if you're looking to get something similar and do similar work that I do, this is a great machine. And the 57 is just as great as well. So just want to give you guys my 2 cents on this. I appreciate all you guys watching. I'm sure if you've got questions, and just put, drop me a comment below. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you guys have got. But yeah, pretty much just wanted to make a comparison video, my thoughts on this machine. But been very happy with it. It does need to be cleaned up. She's a bit of a mess. I had to apologize for that. She's dirty. I run her pretty hard. But great machine. Very happy with it. And whenever I upgrade, most likely going to go get another U55, because been really happy with it. So, all right, guys. Appreciate you guys watching. Have a great week. If you got questions, hit me in the comments below. Thanks, everybody. Bye.